We continue to hear from the letter to the Philippians in our first readings at daily Mass. And in the passage we're given today from chapter 3, St. Paul condemns the spirit of worldliness. He speaks about people whom he refers to as enemies of the cross of Christ. And his definition of those people are people whose minds are occupied with earthly things. Back in 2015, Pope Francis presided over a gathering of priests and religious in Naples, in which he condemned the spirit of worldliness entering into consecrated life. And he gave two telltale signs that worldliness has entered into consecrated life. The first sign is an unhealthy fascination with media, news, TV, entertainment. And the second sign is an attachment to money and material things. And he gave two very striking examples. I would actually add tragic examples of sisters that he knew who fell into those two problems, those two signs of worldliness. I want to share these with you. So Francis, in the first one, the first sign, the fascination with media and news and TV, Francis talked about some sisters he knew in his first diocese he was assigned to, who were good and worked hard, but lived in a house that was old and needed to be repaired. However, when the sisters redid their house, they didn't just do it well, but they did it too well, even luxuriously, because they put a television in every room. And when the time for the soap opera came, you couldn't find a single sister in the convent because they were all in their rooms watching the soap opera. And he said that these are the things which bring the spirit of worldliness in. That's the first example. Wait till you hear the second one. And this is the one about the attachment to money and material things. Francis also spoke about the importance of consecrated persons living the spirit of poverty. When the church isn't living the spirit, and when the desire for profit creeps into the hearts of religious, it's ugly, he said. And he called to mind the story of another religious woman he knew who was a good person and was thrifty in her work, but was too attached to money. Even though the sister was unaware of this and did her work well, her heart was so attached to money, and she selected people based off the money they had. This woman's final humiliation came when she was around 70 years old and suddenly lost consciousness and collapsed in a living room full of professors while on a coffee break between classes at her school. Francis recalled that while people were slapping her face trying to revive her, one professor came and said, "Put a bill for 100 pesos in front of her and she'll come back to life." The poor thing was already dead, Francis said, but this was the last word that was spoken about her when they didn't know whether she was dead or alive. It's a terrible witness, he said. Consecrated men and women, religious who are businessmen, no, never. Well, in contrast to those two signs of worldliness, Pope Francis proposes two spirits: the spirit of prayer and the spirit of poverty. And I'll just share with you what he says there. So about the spirit of prayer and those sisters who were watching the soap operas, Francis says, to live with a worldly spirit is not what Jesus wanted. And he recalled how in his prayer to God the Father before his arrest, Jesus said, "I don't ask you to take me out of the world, but to defend me from the spirit of the world." When a consecrated person lives in the spirit of prayer, they give a witness that people can see, the Pope said, explaining that even with a lack of vocations, this witness of prayer is enough to make a young person say, "I want to be like that priest," or "I want to be like that sister." And then the spirit of poverty, he simply says, consecrated men and women who are businessmen know never. Poverty is the first beatitude. And he asked each religious present to do an examination of conscience, asking themselves, how is my life of poverty? Very striking, isn't it? What a prophetic voice we have in this Holy Father. So today would actually be a good chance to do an examination of conscience on all those things. To ask ourselves, is there any attachment within me to media, news, entertainment, television? Is there any attachment in me to material goods and money? Or am I instead doing what I should be doing as a religious, living in the spirit of prayer and living the spirit of poverty? And if we wanted to sum it up all in one question, am I living, as St. Paul says I should be, as a citizen of heaven, or am I somehow allowing the spirit of the world into my life or into our community? As we prepare to receive Jesus in the Eucharist, let's ask him for the grace to be in the world, but not of the world, so that everyone who looks at us can see in us signposts pointing to our true home, which is not this world, but heaven.